Assalamu alaikum girls, I'm Miss Saima Khan and today we will have the 7th lecture from this atomic structure chapter. In this we will study about the most interesting thing, that is X-rays. If you remember at the start of the chapter, I told you that how are X-rays produced. Now in detail we will study that how are X-rays produced. Discovery of X-rays. You would be surprised to listen that X-rays were discovered accidentally, and it was Röntgen who in December 28th in 1895 accidentally found that if cathode rays are pointed to fall on any heavy metal, that is the target, they produce some penetrating short wavelength rays, and he named them as X-rays. So it means that discovery of X-rays was not done properly. By accident some rays were coming out, and later on they found that they are basically the X-rays and they are of short wavelength. Whatever metal target is placed in front of it, that is any anode or any metal target, and cathode rays or electrons are bombarded on it, the rays which are given out from it, they are of short wavelength and they are basically named as X-rays. And what are their properties? That they are electromagnetic in nature and have high frequency. If you remember in the Planck's quantum theory, we have just discussed the relationship between frequency and energy as well as wavelength. Over here they have written that they are of high frequency but their wavelengths are short. So this can be one of the objectives which they can ask you, that relationship between frequency and wavelength is dash. So this depends upon the type of the anode or metal target which we are using. Frequency will depend upon that. Higher the frequency or lower the frequency, it means that lower atomic number metal target is used or heavier atomic number metal target is used. Mostly the thing which was used for this metal target was tungsten filament, and X-rays are emitted in all directions from the metal target, so they have to be used for any purpose. Now nowadays you must have heard about X-rays, that we are some person if has any fracture, that person is going to make an X-ray of the bone or of that body part where there is any problem. So X-rays are emitted in all the directions from the metal target. So proper or useful purpose can be done when only through a window these X-rays are allowed to pass and hit that any object over there, and behind that those rays will go and give an image. They are basically known as we very simply say them as X-rays. So they can be used for useful purpose through the windows. Every metal has its own characteristic X-ray. That means characteristic X-rays means that if we are suppose saying that we are taking uranium or any other metal target, any radioactive or any other even metal target, tungsten, any other, these rays when will go and hit them, the rays which are coming out would be the X-rays, depending upon the shell from which an electron is knocked out, and any outer electron when comes to the inner electron orbit and resides over there, the amount of energy which is given out is in the form of X-rays. So every metal has its own characteristic. X-rays means that it has its own wavelength, its own frequency. We just can't say that any two metals would be having the same X-rays. If the metals are different, it means that their X-rays would be different. The way every person has its own fingerprints, in the same manner we can say that all the elements have their own fingerprints instead of saying or using the word fingerprints, we use the word X-rays for the metals. Now, you can see this diagram that in the X-ray tube, that how are X-rays produced, that when a cathode is present and electrons are coming out from it, or cathode rays are coming out from it and hitting the anode, which we are saying them as the metal target. When it is coming out and hitting it, instead and in its return, it is giving out rays. You can see that certain rays are coming out from it. These rays which are coming out are basically known as X-rays, and X-rays produced when high-speed electrons hit the metal target. The rays which are produced are known as X-rays. All this is very important, particularly this diagram is very important. They can ask you simply for your short questions that draw the production of X-rays. So you have to draw this diagram. Now, what is the relationship between X-rays and atomic number? This is one of the most important short questions that give the relationship between X-rays and atomic number. Atomic number is represented by Z, and it is that Moseley in 1913 did comprehensive study on X-rays. So, they can ask you that who has done maximum work on the atomic number? It was Moseley. Before Moseley, most of the work was done on atomic weights, not atomic number, but Moseley was the first who has worked on the atomic numbers. And then he related these atomic numbers with the X-rays. He worked on 38 different elements, from aluminum to gold, aurum, and they have different wavelengths, and their range was from 0.04 to 0.08 angstrom. This can be an objective. What is the range on which the wavelength Moseley was working for? Or another objective can be that what was the total number of the elements on which Moseley was working, and what mostly elements which are given are, they can give you the name of so many elements and you have to find out. And aluminum as well as gold or aurum are the ones which would be the correct one. So he proved that frequency, that is nu, of X-rays increases in a regular manner from one element to another in the periodic table. That means as we move from one element to another, its atomic number would change. That will vary, would increase. If you are increasing the atomic number, then the X-rays, whatever would be coming out, their frequency would be different. That means their frequency would be increasing. So he said that frequency has basically the relationship with X-rays. And what is that equation by the help of which we can say that frequency and X-rays are having any relationship with the atomic number? That frequency of these rays are directly proportional to the number of protons in the nucleus. And what is meant by number of protons? Basically, number of protons are the number of atomic number, or Z, because number of protons would always be equal to number of electrons if it is a neutral atom. So what is the relationship? That under root frequency is directly proportional to Z, or atomic number. Now, what different conclusions were made from Moseley's study? This is another very important short question. First conclusion is that whatever the spectral lines, or we can say that those X-rays which are given out, can be classified into two groups. That of short wavelength, which would be named as K series, and the other of long wavelength, which are known as L series. So generally we can say that spectral lines can be classified as K series and L series. Second point or second conclusion from Moseley's study is that if target element is of higher atomic number, then the wavelength of X-rays would become shorter. It means that the relationship between wavelength and atomic number is inversely proportional. So you can just see that we have written it as that Z or atomic number is inversely proportional to wavelength. And what is the relationship between atomic number and frequency? Both of them are directly proportional to each other. But with the wavelength, it is inversely proportional. Third point is that the relationship between frequency and the atomic number is that both of them are directly proportional to each other. So under root frequency is directly proportional to Z. Or if we just remove this proportionality and put an equality sign, we get an equation as that under root frequency is equal to A into Z minus B, where A and B are constants, and this is basically the Moseley's law. They can ask you that what is Moseley's law? So for that you have to write all both of these equations. Now, production of X-rays. That how are basically X-rays produced? That we can say that in the very first topic when we were studying this chapter, or we started this chapter, at the start I told you that how are X-rays and gamma rays produced. Now in detail we will study over here and you will be able to understand it. So Moseley used the technique of X-ray spectroscopy to determine the atomic number of elements. Because every element has its own X-rays, would be having its own frequency, its own wavelength, so its atomic number would be different from another one. Such as one person is different from another, in the same manner, X-rays, frequency, wavelength, all these would be different from one element to another. Now, X-rays are produced in a cathode ray tube when electron beam or cathode rays fall on a metal target. When an electron of a cathode ray hits metal target, it can knock out electrons from the inner shells of the atom and in return making it an anion over there. This produces a metal ion with an electron. The ion is unstable and an electron from an orbital of higher energy drops into the half-filled orbital of energy and energy is emitted out. This energy is basically in the form of X-rays. Simply we can say that if we are taking an atom and we are bombarding that metal target or that atom with the cathode rays, the electrons which are coming in that atom are penetrating deep and knocking out the inner shell. That simply we can say that suppose say that it is a K shell knocking out an electron from any inner shell, suppose K shell, in return making it an ion. But that ion would be really unstable because very inner shells will not be completed. Outer shells although would be completed but inner won't be completed. So according to the rules, inner shells has to be filled first, then only the outer electrons are possible. So what happens is that electron from any outer shell will jump and will fill it so that the inner shells or the orbits are filled, as well as the outer which has given out its electron to the inner makes it an ion over there. Now when it is giving out electron from the outer to the inner orbital, it is emitting out energy. This energy which is given out is basically in the form of X-rays. So it means that moving an electron from outer to an inner orbital produces basically the X-rays. Now uses of X-rays, this is another very important short question that gave the uses of X-rays. So what are the uses? First one is that they are used to photograph the interior of the object. That is, whatever the interior of the object or inner structure of the object would be there, if you just pass X-rays through it, you can find full one picture that what are the things or what are the materials present in that structure. Second is that Röntgen's discovery, after its discovery in January 20th, 1896 in Dartmouth, New Hampshire, X-rays were used to assist in the setting of person's broken arm. That is, when X-rays were used, picture was given or an X-ray was given in which the broken arm or broken part of the bone was identified. Later on, that fracture which was created was removed by putting on the substance over there, so that that broken arm becomes in a normal form. This was really a very major breakthrough in the scientific study. So mostly nowadays, this thing which we use or the thing which we say that we are making an X-ray is basically this structure, whatever we are talking about. Third point is related to the structure of the elements or the structure of the salts which we have or the structure of the substance which is present with us. Layers would definitely be present in the elements when they are in the solid state or in the compound or in the salt form. Those layers which are present would definitely be having certain distance from one layer to another, and certain structures would be present, or we can say that crystals are present which are giving proper shape. These crystals which are present, their layers which are formed between one and another, their distance is fixed over there, as well as the atom position is fixed throughout all the crystal, even when you break it and make it in a minute form, or if it is in a bigger structure, crystal structure over there. The layers distance from one to another are basically determined by the help of these X-rays. So the point is, the layers of closely packed particles in a crystal constitute the plane, and it was Max von Laue who said that the particles and the planes of the crystal might be separated by a distance. That is, definitely there would be some distance present between the layers by the distance of the same order of magnitude as the wavelength of the X-rays. That is, if you are passing certain wavelengths and X-rays are given out, those X-rays which are given out would be really depending upon the distance between the layers. So beam of X-rays should be diffracted by the crystal. Every crystal would have its own layer distance, so their diffraction would also be different from another crystal. This pattern which was obtained are known as Laue pattern, that is, these symmetrical diffraction patterns are known as Laue patterns. Fourth is that William Bragg and Lawrence Bragg determined the internal structure of a crystal, which is known as X-ray diffraction technique, and this is one of the most important techniques for the finding out the structure of a crystal. Then we come to the shells and the subshells of an orbital. That what is meant by a shell or a subshell? When we talk about an atom, we say that electrons are revolving around it. So when they are revolving around, it means that there would be certain path, that fixed path through which the electron is revolving around the nucleus is known as orbit or shell. And these orbits or shells are made up of orbitals or subshells. These shells or the orbits, the name which we give them as K shell, L shell, M shell or orbit. And further, in order to find out that the electron is present in which part of an atom, for that we have to consider the orbital or the subshell over there. Basically, we say that there are 4 orbitals. Shells can be K, L, M, N and so on. Orbitals are fixed, that there are only 4 orbitals. that is s orbital, p orbital, d orbital and f orbital. S means that they are spherical. P means that they have structure which is dumbbell shape in structure, and S, P, D, P stands for principal, D stands for diffuse and F stands for fundamental. That is, these orbitals, we have given them as abbreviation as S, P, D and F. But basically this S stands for spherical, S stands for sharp, P stands for principal, D stands for diffuse and F stands for fundamental. This can be one of the objective which they can ask you, that they can give you so many words for S, so many words for P, D and F. You have to remember all these names as such. First of all, we'll talk about the s orbital. It is spherical and symmetrical in shape. That is, from any side you see, it is symmetrical, means it can be divided equally into equal halves. So it is spherical, that is circular, and is symmetrical in shape. Its size varies with increase in the value of n. And what is n? It is the shell number. That is, we can say that first shell is smaller, second shell is larger, third shell would definitely be even larger for an atom over there. So we can say, or you can even see on your screens over there, that 1s orbital is smaller than the 2s orbital, which is even smaller than the 3s orbital. But all these s orbitals are spherical in shape. Now, if we are talking about 1s and 2s, in between the distance which would be present, the probability of finding an electron would really be zero or would not be possible over there. And the areas through which electron probability of finding an electron is zero is known as nodal plane, or is known as node. Then comes the p orbital. You can see that it is dumbbell shape and has three directions in space. Generally we say that we have x, y and z axis over there. You can see on your screens as x, y and z. When an orbital or this shape which is present is dumbbell shape, it is directly present on the x-axis, the name given to that orbital is px. You can see that P is written like that and X is present as a in denominator, or you can say that as a subscript over there. Both of them are not at an equal level. X, Y and Z are lower than P. Now what is Py? When the probability of finding an electron is maximum on the y-axis, it is named as py orbital. Similarly, the z orbital, when probability of finding an electron is maximum at z-axis, it is known as pz. All these orbitals are very important from your short question point of view, as well as they sometimes ask you to draw the structures for them only, and no need of writing any explanation. So for drawing, you have to mention the axis about which you are talking about. Now orbitals which have different directions but are equal in energy, they are known as degenerate orbitals. That means if px, py and pz, all of them have their own directions. They are not fixed at px, px, px. No, they are different, but their energy is same. When it is in this condition, the orbital is known as degenerate orbitals. Girls, do make the practice of this, because simply by seeing that it is like this, it seems that it is very easy. But when you make the practice, you will come to know that what are the mistakes which are possible over there. So just simply don't see, do make the practice of all these things. Then comes the d orbital. These orbitals are also dumbbell and have 5 directions in space. Now you can see that those all 5 which are over there, D, 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 D are all written properly, but this X, Y, Y, Z, X, Z, X square minus Y square and Z square are written a little below. So do remember to write it exactly like this. Otherwise, if you just write it in a straight line, your marks can be cut. Now, if you just see the structure, we can see that X, Y means that these dumbbell shapes which are present, they are not exactly on x-axis and they are not exactly on y-axis. Rather than they are in between x and y-axis. So they are named as dxy. Same is the case for dyz, that whatever those axes are over there, that is y-axis and z-axis, the orbitals which are present or probability of finding an electron which is over there is not exactly on y and z axis, rather than in between y and z axis. Similarly for x and z, it is not directly on x and z axis, rather than it is in between x axis and z axis. Now for x square minus y square, it is directly on x axis and y axis, while for z square, it is along the z axis as well as a circular form is present in the middle. If we are talking about applying the magnetic field to all these 5 electrons probability, we can see that all these 5 orbitals, if magnetic field is not provided, it will be same. So they are known as degenerate orbitals when all of them have same energy level. But if we provide the magnetic field, their energies would be different, making sure that it depends upon the axis in which they are present. In detail for this thing, it is not necessary at this level. For this, if you just study any higher class, you will study over there. Next comes the f orbitals. It has 7 directions in space on placing it in a magnetic field, which are complicated to draw. So as such, f orbitals are not to be drawn. Now s orbital, p orbital and d orbital, you have to learn separately for all of them, because all of them are important, but most important is how you have to draw their structures. If you know how to draw the structures, thing which you have to learn can be done it easily. All this s, p, d and f orbitals which we have studied would be helpful for us in finding in drawing the electronic configuration. Because next which we are going to do is the quantum numbers and the electronic configuration, that what are the rules which follow and which make that electron will be moving in this orbit or orbital and not over here. What are the rules? So for that we have to do all these orbitals. If you remember, definitely in your metric 9th or metric, you must have done electronic configuration for some of the elements. Over here too, we will be doing some of the electronic configuration. Now, if we have to draw an electron in an s orbital, so as such circular can't be drawn. So what do is that we just draw one block and put an electron either upward or downward half arrow, indicating that an electron is present, or if 2 electrons are present, because maximum probability of finding an electron within s orbital are only 2, more than 2 isn't possible over there. So 2 arrows half filled would be present. So for p orbital, we talk about that 3 structures or 3 dumbbell shapes are present, which are px, py and pz, that is directly on the 3 axes which we have. And when we are drawing it for the electronic configuration, we just draw 3 blocks and start filling the blocks from the x-axis, that is px, py and pz. But when we are pairing the electrons, it has to be paired first with z, then y and at the end x-axis over there. Similarly, for d orbital, we have to draw 5 orbitals or 5 blocks, and those 5 would be dxy, dyz, dzx, dx square minus y square, and dz square. Similarly, for f, we draw 7 blocks and we start filling from one side and then pairing from the opposite side. I hope so that all of it is clear to you girls and there isn't any problem. But if you have any, you can ask me. Thank you girls. Khuda Hafiz.